Hey everybody. This is the first of our twice a week live streams that we're doing. I decided because it's such a beautiful day, I didn't want to be cramped up in the studio for the live stream. So I'm sitting out here with George, who is our associate producer. You've been given a title.
Let me log in.
George is too busy looking at memes when he's supposed to be checking out the live stream. But how beautiful is this day? My gosh, I am so grateful and I feel extremely privileged to be able to have a house to live at. Can you mute that just so I can, okay, thanks. And this is gorgeous Tucson, Arizona. We're here at my grandparents' house and sitting on the patio and, you know, doing the best we can. So I want to talk to you a little bit about the Biden vote. Just for those of you who are tuning in now, we are just starting this new process of Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. happy hour time. This is kombucha. We are going to be doing live streams. And then on Thursdays, we're going to be doing it again, 4 p.m. Pacific time, Eastern at 7 p.m. And we'll be doing more engaging super chats. But if you do have a super chat, I will try to get to them. George is going to be monitoring them. But on Thursday night, I'm going to have a more active super chat because I'll be in front of OBS, which is the system we use. And I'll be, actively responding, just sort of a free flow. But Tuesdays is where I have sort of a point that I want to get across. And then, through that, you guys can ask questions along the way. But make sure to click subscribe, like, share this. This is how we're going to grow this channel. If you don't know already, independent media is struggling a little bit right now because everyone's tuning into corporate media to get their news on COVID, to get to find out, what the latest drama is between the Cuomo brothers. to hear the latest propaganda from Donald Trump, the president. So independent media is, we got to work through this. We have to work through this together. So it depends on you guys sharing and liking and clicking that little bell. So I want to talk about what it means for Biden to win. What is the base that he needs excited to win the nomination? Now, history would show evidence that a more excited Democratic base means you have higher turnout, which is very good for the general election. This is obviously unprecedented. We're sitting in a situation right now where we don't even know if we're going to have a normal election in November, and it's hard to plan. Is there going to be some sort of central way to deal with the vote by mail system? We don't know these factors right now at all. But what I will say, and let me just hang on one second, guys. I'm gonna hide all chats for myself, but you're gonna show them to me, right, George?
Yeah.
If something pops up, okay, good, because it's just a little distracting. Are you in my end? On the back here, where Joe Biden is attempting, at least in policy and platform and engagement with Bernie, progressive base that Democrats have traditionally needed, excited to turn out so they win in the general election. But, I actually put a little bit less weight on that, the excited base. And my own personal feelings have changed on this. My perspective is presidential history. When Democrats have won, there have been extraordinary candidates who are younger, who have mobilized that younger base. But is it because of that younger base, or is it because the Republicans frankly screwed up? And I think if you look at 1992 with Bill Clinton, a little bit of an outlier because you had Ross Perot, and he was running against a Republican who was not very well liked, sure, but George Bush Sr., he didn't get reelected, so that hasn't happened since then. But Bill Clinton had mobilized a young base of voters, and he was charismatic, and he was engaging, and he had a sophisticated operation. That's how we were all blessed with the presence of James Carville for the next 35 years, was from that campaign. Despite all the drama of that campaign, I mean, there were countless scandals, and but they were, you know, the Clintons are hustlers, they're fighters, and if you want a great book to read, it's Joel Klein's book. It was titled Anonymous, Primary Colors. It's based off of the Clinton campaign. Great book to read. It's more about the sex scandal, but you get an insider perspective. It's also movies, so you can probably find that somewhere as well. So 1992, Bill Clinton wins because the Republicans were not very popular. George Bush had run on read my lips, no new taxes, and of course, he taxed everybody. So, you know, that was played out in the 92 election. Then, and then 2000, you know, Democrats had not solidified their support. Some of the trade deals, whether or not we had consciously seen it, or it was registering with voters yet, or it made it into the public. You know, really, I think it was Bernie Sanders who started bringing up the Clinton legacy. But you know, you had a horrible criminal justice record with the Clinton administration, which we all see very clearly now. You had horrible trade deals, and that probably, you know, made the Democratic base less excited for Al Gore, because it really should have never been so close where the Supreme Court set the decision. They should have been able to activate a 50-state strategy and engage voters that, you know, would have turned out for Al Gore, who again was not the most dynamic candidate. So then, you know, move forward and you have Barack Obama, who was running when Republicans were at their lowest point. You know, George W. Bush was extremely unpopular because of the Iraq War. So if you look back at the times when the Democrats have won, even for Congress, it's when Republicans were at low approval ratings, when Republicans were royally screwing up. It's not necessarily because the Democrats had outmaneuvered them or were sophisticated in their strategies. They ran dynamic candidates in the presidential years, which makes up a big difference. They're younger. They had a more excited base, but again, the Republicans were extremely unpopular. And that includes 2006 when we won back the House, and that includes 1994. Well, actually, 94 we lost the House, but you know, you have to look at these years. 2010 we got a shellacking after Obama. You know, it's not. Republicans win because they usually have their eye on the ball and they sometimes overplay their hand. And this is just pure tactical politics. Too many Americans are hurt. They go too far with the Iraq War. The economy collapses literally in the middle of the election, weeks before the election, and McCain is not the candidate to really to own. I mean, he was. You go back to those debates, some of the town halls. There's a famous moment where John McCain was walking by the camera, didn't even realize what camera he was supposed to speak into, and it reminds me a lot of Joe Biden. And the Republicans were giving McCain, you know, he was an outsider, but he'd been part of the Republican establishment, but he was a maverick. He went against party politics a lot. But, you know, a lot of historians have said that he earned the nomination. Doesn't mean he was going to win it. And I think they knew that based on trends. And they knew where the Republican base of support was at that point. They knew the popularity was very low and the election was not winnable. And of course, Barack Obama was a clear alternative to John McCain. And Hillary Clinton too. So let's flash forward to today. You've got Joe Biden, who I think is the McCain of this election. The Democrats are like, all right, fine, you've run 2 times before, we'll give you the nomination. But you know, are they planning to win against the Republicans? I don't know. I don't know if Trump is going to hit that low point. I think COVID just threw everybody off with their strategy, and I think it hurt us as a movement as well. But ultimately, you know, Joe Biden doesn't want to be in a situation like Hillary Clinton was in 2016, where they clearly dismissed the left and attacked the left and continued those wars on to today. I'm not saying that Joe Biden's supporters and his staff are on the same page, but, you know, judging by the relationship, the on-camera relationship, and the rhetoric, the official rhetoric coming from the Biden camp and Bernie himself, it seems like they just want that drama to end. I don't think it's necessarily because Joe Biden thinks that the progressive base is going to win them the election. I think we as a movement, and specifically folks who tune into these left channels, have to understand that Bernie's voting bloc, was not all progressives. It's very hard, right? A lot of us read Jacobin, a lot of us go to DSA meetings and read The Intercept, and we're in left media, and the younger you are, the more likely you are to fall in those camps. We're online, but Bernie had a lot of union support. He had a lot of folks who had been Democrats and had been involved in the Democratic Party, who had been local activists and work still to this day with their local establishments. I mean, unions are a perfect example. I said this on Sam Cedars' show today on Majority Report. I said, a lot of union members, their paychecks are dependent on the negotiations that a union has with a governor. I mean, the state of New York is a perfect example. So does it mean that they agree with the establishment? No, and that's probably why they were supporting Bernie Sanders. But are they gonna just say, screw the Democratic Party, I'm gonna start a third party? Probably not, because they're still Democrats, and they've been Democrat, not all of them, but a good chunk of Bernie's support have been lifelong Democrats. And so we as progressives have to think about this. Where is our power? I think that Bernie's voters, it's a coalition. It's a coalition of union members in the Rust Belt in their 60s. I wish more of them had supported Bernie and not gone to Biden, but he has that part of the coalition. There's young people. There's young progressives in cities with diverse backgrounds. There are teachers, union members, that are staging uprisings in red states, as they should be. But again, it's not like Bernie is just all progressives. You'd be surprised. I mean, there are independents that registered as Democrats, but might lean more conservative. So, would they join a progressive third party? So you have to take all these things into consideration. And with that, understand that our leverage against the establishment was Bernie keeping this block together in the primary. And now we have to reconfigure what is our leverage. Is it just the truly progressive portion of Bernie's base? Is that going to influence this election? It could. It could very well. I mean, in states like Wisconsin and where Hillary, of course, didn't open up an office, that could have influenced the election. But when you look at the numbers, it seems like the progressives did turn out for Hillary. But maybe folks who felt very disenchanted by the party or by Hillary, or didn't feel like she was talking about trade enough, they stayed home. And that trend happens when the Republicans are not completely screwing up, meaning the numbers, their approval ratings are not low enough. It's like there's a direct correlation between the Republicans' approval rating being extremely low and our enthusiasm from working people who, over the last 30 years, have just pulled away little bit by bit from the Democratic Party, whether because the Democratic Party just decided to abandon any sort of 50-state strategy, abandon unions, and not be the party that represents working people, or working people just felt like, nothing's going to change. Maybe both. We have a super chat question. What is the super chat question, George?
I'm on the wrong screen.
Uh-oh. We've got a technical issue. It should be on the right.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, guys. Pause for this commercial. Uh-oh.
I think I'm on the right spot.
Yeah, you're there. That's it. There should be a super chat that pops up. All right, let me show the chat and see. Yeah, so this is the situation that we have right now, is like, where is our actual leverage rather than our perceived leverage? Saying, we're not going to vote. And when Biden loses, he's going to realize that the establishment's going to realize that they needed us. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if withholding our vote, and I'm not telling you to do anything because I don't even know what I'm doing at this point. I'm just working through the logic here that if they wanted our vote so bad, if they actually wanted to win, if that's the starting place, then they would actively try to win our vote. They would be investing in the progressive movement. If they know that they can get 65% of Bernie's voting bloc and 20% of that is progressive, right? 50% of it is just, union members that probably weren't interested in Hillary Clinton but might be interested in Joe Biden, then maybe that's the math that they're doing. So we have to figure out where is our point of leverage. And this is a class in power. It's a pretty tough thing to assess right now. And I think, moving forward, we have to have a deeper understanding of where the pressure points are in the Democratic Party. Bernie Sanders was one giant finger on a pressure point for the Democrats. He was an annoyance to them. He had a massive movement that was, constantly pointing out, or does have a movement that's constantly pointing out their flaws and their inconsistencies and their corruption. And now, he is saying, all right, that's over. We all essentially have to fall in line for Joe Biden because the bigger threat is Donald Trump. That's true. It's not a, it's true. Joe Biden is a little bit better than Donald Trump for many reasons, not all reasons. But it's Joe Biden's duty to make sure that his coalition is inclusive of the next generation, which is where I say, if you want to have an active and viable Democratic Party, Joe Biden, which is structured by the people that are running your campaign, so you actually have an interest in this, then you have to start speaking to a diverse coalition below the age of 50. Working class, educated, people in cities and in rural areas, Latinos, African Americans. You have to, the Rust Belt, you have to really engage all of these voters, Joe Biden, because if you only focus on one little portion of Bernie's vote that will fall in line because they're Democrats, and you ignore maybe some of the others, then you might be in a similar situation as Hillary Clinton. The one thing I think that'll be different this time around is I think just based on reputation, Joe Biden will be able to appeal to a few of, more of those working class folks, union folks, than Trump. I don't know how effectively he'll be able to do so, but way more than Hillary. I mean, even if Joe Biden was one of the architects of TPP and was completely supportive of NAFTA and all of the major trade deals of the last 40 years, even if that's the case, he has branded himself as working class Joe for the last 40 years. So, some of that works because the voters that he needs to engage have been more cognizant of that brand for several decades. Whereas younger people are like, well, we don't buy that. We don't buy that because we lived through the Obama years and we were told that Obama was going to build this bright, shiny future. And meanwhile, we have more student loan debt than we can even process. We were already living with our parents and being blamed for eating out of avocado toast and, buried in debt. And now after COVID, we don't have health care. Our family members are dying and sick, including, it's not, the criminal justice system has locked up our parents and our loved ones. This is Obama era, right? And so it doesn't work on younger people. And we saw that with Bernie's message. So Joe Biden needs to think to himself, if I want to be president, if I want to be the leader of the party, and whoever runs with him, who's most likely to be much younger than Joe Biden, has to say, I need the Democratic Party to be viable to win in a general election. They don't need it to be viable in a primary because they win when the progressives don't show up in a primary. They lose in a general when the base is not excited. That doesn't necessarily mean all progressives. It just means their base. Working people, progressives, folks who have not really been represented by the Democratic Party and aren't in the primary. The real question is, what is Joe Biden going to do with pretty much all voters under the age of 60? That's the question. Because he's going to be fighting with voters over the age of 60, including independents, with Donald Trump. And he can't rely on 2000s era, well, we have to focus on the Midwestern mom. That really hasn't worked. I mean, they blame the Midwestern moms in 2016 for not voting for Hillary Clinton, but that's not something traditionally, those independent swing voter moms have not actually won or lost the election for Democrats. it's been, again, about did you turn out the working class base? So I don't know where you live, but one thing I'll say to you is I'm hearing a lot of this online, and it happened in 2016. Oh, well, we need to show them that they need our vote. They don't care. They don't care. I'm going to show them anything. They know very well what the demographics are. They know what the numbers are. They don't really care. And with all due respect, my friend Kyle Kalinske, I see what he was doing, and it was very smart. But I just don't agree with the base of that. The base of, I don't think that they, number one, care about the future of the party. And the people who should care about the future of the party are really the folks that are younger, want to be president in the future, and have to rely on the Democratic Party. But in this election, they're going to blame whoever they want to blame, whether you vote for Biden or not. Listen, I get blamed for being a Jill Stein voter. I wasn't a Jill Stein voter. I won't say who I voted for, but I was not a Jill Stein voter. I actively, regrettably in some cases, I was a surrogate on TV for Hillary Clinton after the primary. On election night, I was on air as the results were coming in, defending Hillary Clinton. So no matter what, they're going to blame you, no matter what you do. So think about it personally. Are you going to go out there and tell every single person and campaign, tirelessly for Joe Biden? That's up to you. It depends on what having a Democrat in the White House means for you versus Donald Trump. And I think depending on who you are and your personal circumstances, that could mean many different things. If this is about party politics and showing the Democrats, I will tell you as somebody who understands, I think I understand the Democratic Party pretty well, more than most people. Not all, admittedly, but I try to learn. They don't care. If you're trying to do a giant middle finger to the Democratic Party, they don't care. They don't care. I was on the Unity Reform Commission where we went through the demographics ad nauseum. And let me tell you, Tom Perez knows those numbers. He knows who's leaving the party. Good. More people leave the party, the more they have control. So as long as we look at it from the perspective of the DNC is made up of a collective of coalitions, it's a coalition. You have lobbyists who are also working with Republicans. They don't care. And then you have real Democratic Party activists who do care, but they don't steer the boat, right? So I think if you come from the basis of we don't know whether or not they want Biden to win. I mean, I don't know whether or not for sure they want Biden to win, but my gut is saying they're not doing a lot to try right now, because if they were, they would be reaching out to more of Bernie's voters. And I think they're trying to respect Bernie. If you recall the convention in 2016, Joe Biden and Barack Obama, their speeches respected Bernie much more than some of the Hillary surrogates. And there was a culture difference between how they spoke to progressives between the two factions, because they don't necessarily always agree. But that doesn't mean that they don't have the same agenda. So moving forward, we got to think very long and hard about where we apply our pressure points. Getting involved locally is probably a great way to channel your energy. Finding the lawmakers that the Democrats that you see who are voting conservatively, who are partnering with Republicans. I mean, in a state like Arizona, you have plenty of Democrats who fall in line with Republicans. When Arizona's a pretty independent state, it's not necessarily, right wing the way that the media makes it out to be. So we got a question about the Supreme Court judges. If Trump wins, he picks the next Supreme Court judge. Absolutely. Who is that? That is Adrian. Yeah, I mean, and I guess, playing devil's advocate here, we don't know for sure if Joe Biden's going to pick the most progressive Supreme Court judge. With that being said, just because you voted for conservative Supreme Court judges doesn't mean he's going to pick conservative Supreme Court judges. You know, Obama, I'll give him credit where credit is due, chose the most progressive Supreme Court judges that we have right now. How can we fight any of this, i.e. Tom Perez, Hollywood media that won't report fairly, and corporations backing the DNC? That is EKO. Got it. So that's a lot. How can we fight media, corporate media? How can we fight monopolies? How can we fight the DNC? Again, the more local, the better. They have a harder time. They can't have their hands in every pot, right? And they're very centralized. I'm probably giving away all the secrets online they're watching, but you know, they're very centralized. So not every congressman is going to have an amazing field team or be popular in their district, or really have they ever been challenged before. Maybe they haven't knocked on doors in 30 years or made phone calls. You know, if you have a congressman, make sure to look at their records, because sometimes I think we can, you know, I live in New York, there's some people being challenged that, yeah, are they that bad? Probably not the most important people to challenge. Give a shout out to the Bronx. What's up, Bronx? How you guys doing? My neighbor's in the Bronx. I'm a Queens gal, but yeah, so I mean, the Bronx is a perfect example. So you've got a lot of people challenging the status quo in the Bronx. The Bronx machine used to be this machine that was very hard to penetrate. And in the last few years, starting with the IDC being, the Independent Democratic Conference being challenged in 2016, 18 when they won, you know, that was a campaign that was very localized. And they challenged 8 Democrats who were in the Senate from Democratic districts like the Bronx, and they were voting with Republicans, literally caucusing with Republicans. So activists got together, decided to challenge these IDC members, beat several of them. The whole entire IDC fell apart, and now the state Senate is back in the Democrats' hands. So you can actually apply more pressure to the Democrats. So when the Democrats act badly, you know, they actually have to listen, especially if they're from the city where it's more progressive. So it started with the IDC. The leader of the IDC, his district represented part of the Bronx. And then you have, you know, AOC, of course, winning her district. It was Queens and the Bronx. She won heavily in Queens, not as much so in the Bronx, but she's from the Bronx. And so the Bronx machine lost their congressperson that they went to. You have a seat that just opened up with Serrano. He's a congressman in the Bronx. You know, that's an open seat right now, and there's a crazy primary that's happening. Shout out to Samelis Lopez, who Matriarch endorsed. She's running in that. Go check her out. Go check out Matriarch if you have a chance. Click subscribe, like, share too, because I have to remember to do that. And then, like, you know, the Bronx chair decided that they're no longer running the show. They stepped down because they can't control it. That's how you tackle power. That PowerPoint. The Bronx machine controlled a lot of levers in New York State and beyond, even Puerto Rico, and the DNC, because they had DNC members and worked closely with Tom Perez. So you know, you have to figure out where those points are. In Arizona, I would say, just because I'm here and it's fresh, you know, do you challenge Kyrsten Sinema? That's going to be a lot of money to challenge a U.S. senator. Can you raise $60 million? Listen, if you know like a billionaire progressive that wants to run against Kyrsten Sinema or anything, go for it. But it requires a lot more work, and they're very good at bigger campaigns. They're also very good if you have a local party that exercises a lot of control. They're very good at squashing campaigns too. So like my campaign. So you know, but it's really about developing a strategy, figuring out who the real bad actors are, not showing all your cards all the time, you know, having meetings at your house with progressives, plotting it out, thinking about who these candidates should be. Not all, you know, sometimes the candidates that step up aren't the best. Maybe they are, who knows? I'm just saying, like, you know, running the right types of candidates against these bad actors. I would start with people that are not great. You know, do you have to go after every single person who's you know, in position of power right now that may not be fully progressive? I feel like you want to prioritize. And prioritize, you know, the more evil the opponent, the easier it is to make that case to the public. And to Democrats, that might be Hillary Democrats. Because IDC, once people understood what it was, Hillary Democrats were like, whoa, what? we don't have a Democratic state, and so suddenly you had Bernie and Hillary people aligned. You had A.B. Siskind and myself saying no to the IDC. So you have to figure out how you're going to build coalitions. But again, hyper local. And, getting involved in unions, trying to reform your union from within at the local level all the way to the top. But the bigger the fight, the bigger the position, the harder the fight. It's, pressure points, city council. And, the other thing is like, sometimes you see that people just want to run because they want to run. They volunteered a couple times. They're like, all right, it's my turn to run. Or they volunteered on campaigns a couple times. They think they can run campaigns. It's important to get your experience too, because then you're more flexible and your strategy sharpens. The more involved you get in campaigns, you understand what you're working with. You also have organizations that may seem like they're on your side and they might claim to be progressive, but maybe they're there to tank it or cut deals behind the scenes. I mean, this is real politics. And depending on where you are, the more complicated it gets. Obviously, New York is a cesspool of complicated politics, I'll say. I won't go corruption all the way. It used to be more corrupt. Chicago, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. These are states that are we have an umbrella here that's about to collapse, that are difficult to break through, but you really want to think through your strategy. So, yeah, do you have any other questions, George? You see anything?
I think I could find this.
But the presidency is not the end-all, be-all, right? And if you want to understand, okay, so the presidency, we lost it. Now let's break down why. Yes, the Koch brothers, great argument. Dave C., we need a Koch brothers style organization on the progressive left. Yeah, I mean, one of the things the Koch brothers had was all the money, like all the money. I just heard, I haven't heard it yet, but Jamie Peck, who is on the Majority Report and has the podcast Intifada. So the Intifada, I guess, talks about this one publication from the UK, which was a far left publication that was bought by the Koch brothers years ago. I mean, they were so strategic. They were like, how do we take over media? How do we take over state legislatures? How do we fight unions? And they had a 30, 40-year strategy. The DLC, how do we fund the DLC? The people who brought us neoliberalism to the Democratic Party. So what does that look like in 2020? Does it mean we take over corporate media? I don't see that happening. I think that we're moving more and more into a monopoly, especially after COVID, when so many small businesses and medium-sized businesses are going to struggle. You're going to have a more monopolistic system. And you're going to have also workers educated in how they have been already treated poorly, and they're going to be ready to organize. How those what does that look like policy-wise moving forward? Does it mean it's just become more clear to Democrats that they can't side with the monopolies anymore because of a crisis like this? Hopefully. But a Koch brother infrastructure would require, I just don't know if we function that way. I just don't think that we're Republicans. So, we do better when we're decentralized, but we don't want to be scattered and fighting with each other. That's something that history shows us. We just, all of our factions fight with each other. So I think it's localized, it's understanding what, Koch brothers, they funded all of these operations. I don't know if we have that out there, that money. It probably would have shown up at this point. Maybe it's Dan Price. You guys see that guy, Dan Price? He's the one who decided to take a pay cut. He had a financial transaction company, and he gave all of his workers raises and cut the CEO and all the senior management down, I think, $70,000. If we had more CEOs doing that kind of work, and maybe they worked together and took whatever difference is left over and said, let's build a fund where we lobby against, for more regulation. I don't know what the answer is. Maybe it's they fund lobbying for the Democrats, the neoliberal Democrats who are taking bank money, and they say, listen, we're big business, we're banks too, but we want to be on the ethical side. Listen to us. We need to be regulated. Just a thought I'm throwing out there. It may not be real. All right, so we had a super chat. What was the one that just came up? You lose Roe under Trump too. End of story. Yes, you lose Roe. But keep in mind, Trump's base is getting smaller too. The difference is the Republicans have taken over legislatures. He's appointed hundreds of judges across the country, and so generation-wise, they knew 35 years ago. They knew in the early 80s the demographics were not on their side. So the Kochs were extremely smart about how do you take over at the state level so we can write the rules so that we're in control for the next 50 years, even when our demographics have died out. And so Republicans could potentially struggle with the general election, and that's why it's so important when the Democrats have their act together, because the numbers are on our side for a general election, but we of course have the electoral system. So that's where, you know, if Trump is not reelected, then of course we can save Roe. And I think we save Roe for the long run. I think if we win the presidency, and with the demographics on our side, and if we had somebody like a Bernie Sanders, we could probably rebuild some of our state legislatures, because so many people would be motivated to run at the legislative level, which is why you should do that. Which is why you should think about those seats. And that's why populist messages work too. I mean, there are voters that are not as far right-wing, they're not voting on the cultural issues, they're voting on the monetary issues. And because they run a Republican light as a Democrat, they're saying, all right, I'm gonna vote for a Republican. And that Republican decides that they're gonna end Roe v. Wade, or they're going to reduce abortion access in states, or ban abortions, or come up with these crazy Ohio pieces of legislation. The numbers don't line up with the ideologies that are coming out of those states. And that's partly to do with the Republicans being extremely sophisticated with their strategy 30, 40, 50 years out. And especially in years like 2020, where we suddenly have the census is at risk. And what comes out of the census, of course, is, do we have a fair understanding of what the demographics in this country look like? Not to mention there's massive underreporting because of people that are, they're afraid to disclose information to authorities for a whole litany of reasons, authorities meaning the government. And so you already have a census that's not necessarily representing the country. And if people are not engaging the census at typical numbers, it could affect our futures in so many ways. Gerrymandering, of course, being the obvious one, and what the congressional makeup looks like. So, New York will probably lose 2 seats. They usually go with the most junior members, which is why AOC, there's a little bit of fear there, but we won't know for a couple of years. So ultimately, a Koch network, we have to think like the Kochs, but we don't necessarily have to act like the Kochs. We have to see the strategy from their perspective and think about, where are they weak? And not depend on the Democrats. So here's my one piece of advice that I have settled with in the last few days. Bernie's not going to save us. And the Democrats definitely aren't going to save us. So what are we going to do? What are we going to do moving forward so that we maintain solidarity? So that we're not fighting with each other over Joe Rogan tweets or whatever. That we're thinking about, at the end of the day, what is going to affect more people's lives for the better? What is going to protect more workers? What is going to get people out of debt? What is the fastest, surest path forward? How are we going to run people against bad actors, true bad actors, not just whoever your assembly person is? What do our endorsements mean? What leverage do we have at different points? Reading history is super important, but also understanding the strategy that got you to that point. So with that, I love you all. Do we have any other super chats that I've missed?
That I've seen.
I think I got them all. We will be back on Thursday for another super chat. Oh, March on Washington. We want people to be engaged, but let's also be real. Is a march, is a protest always going to get us the end goals we want? Maybe not. Because one piece of advice I was given by an organizer in Europe who did left organizing, been very successful. I don't want to give away his name, but he's very effective. He said that you always have to change your strategy. If they know what's coming, then they know what's coming. 2 super chat questions. Hey, what's the strategy in New Jersey? Great question. Why not lobby Biden to pick Warren? Biden doesn't even listen to us. I'm serious. He won. Okay? There's no uprising against him. We're not depending on the convention, but I don't think it's going to roll. It's going to be a similar type of convention as 2016. Warren, Bernie, whoever it is, I think that Biden is going to make the decision that makes him appear like he's listening, but at the end of the day, suits his needs and really represents the future of the Democratic Party. Who is somebody that is a safe bet for maybe 8 more years? Like if Biden, God willing, makes it, well, I say this as a human, if he wins and he makes it 4 years through his term, but he decides not to run again, who is somebody who will be in leadership 12 years from now? And it was thinking of the next wave of the Democratic Party. I'm not saying I agree with that strategy. I'm just saying that's where his mindset probably is. And there's a circle of leaders right now who've been waiting. Like Andrew Cuomo is a perfect example. He's a little bit older than the rest. And definitely the smartest person in politics right now, by far. So, you know, he might be vying for vice president. Warren might be. I don't see her being the choice, but you never know. And Kamala, you know, she's already indicated that she's set up the joint fundraising agreement with the DNC. So there's a likelihood, but I don't know. I mean, this is the kind of strategy. It's so tightly close to the administration, and they're weighing a lot of options. And I think probably the biggest option is who's going to be the leader of the Democrats moving forward. You know, is it somebody who's savvy enough, who has the coalitions behind them, who has the right base of support, who represents the party? Is that Kamala Harris or is that Andrew Cuomo? Is that Gretchen Whitmore? Probably not. But like, you know, I'm just playing with these names right now. New Jersey, what's going on in New Jersey? How do you win in New Jersey? I mean, New Jersey is very similar to New York. Well, it's not as Phil Murphy doesn't like rule the party with an iron fist like Cuomo does, but hyperlocal, gotta run hyperlocal. Get involved in the party there. I think that there's some openings there to run and become a member of the party. And I've seen a lot of debate come out of Jersey. Not a lot of movement and change, but you know, you definitely want to get involved with party politics there because you also understand what's happening. Like, so much of New York and New Jersey and Pennsylvania is dictated by, and Chicago, or Illinois in general, is dictated by how the party functions in those states. So you can't really do one without the other. Thank you all. You've been great. I'm baking in the sun right now. We'll be back on Thursday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 o'clock Pacific time, and I'm gonna call this happy hour. The Tuesday one's happy hour, and then Thursday I'm gonna be in studio where I'm gonna be more engaged with the audience. Calling Cuomo Mama's boy, hilarious and true. Thank you for that. Chris Cuomo for president.
You're just here to watch me in your glasses, though, right?
Oh, can you all see George in my glasses? He's giving everybody a shout out. All right, take care, everybody. Stay safe, stay healthy, stay inside. And anybody who's on the front lines right now, you know, working, whether you're delivering, packaging, you're in any of the essential services, and of course, if you're in the medical industry, my heart is with you, and I am so grateful. We're all grateful to you because all we're doing here is chatting politics and watching like the Cuomo's bitch on TV and drinking kombucha. We're freaking out about the economy too, but with that being said, you guys are really, really taking the risks right now, and we're grateful to you for that. And I know many of you personally, and you know I've seen what you've had to go through in the last several weeks. So just stay healthy and safe. And my love is to you. And my love is to New York. Mwah!